This would be a great time to do a progress check just to make sure that the torso will deform properly. Let's go ahead and create a temp object that we can skin, and we'll align it to our flexi line. So we can always work with a box. Let's go ahead and create it. All right, from there, we'll go ahead and center its pivot. And let's use Shift A to quick align this to our back control. From there, we'll go ahead and start scaling this object down to about the size of the flexi line. We don't have to skin our chest and pelvis to this object because we already have an idea of how they will deform. These are really simple setups here. We've just linked our bones to these controls. So the only concern we really have is the flexi line at this point. So let's make sure that it is going to hold. So I'll just go ahead and adjust the size of this box a little bit more. We can now go to our modify panel. Let's adjust our height segments to about 5, and we'll increase the width and length by 1 just so we have enough resolution so this cube will hold as we start to twist and deform our flexi line. All right, it might be a good idea to hide the character now, so I'll go to the model layer and do that. And with the box still selected, let's go to our modifier list and press the S key a few times to find the skin modifier. From there, we'll go ahead and choose Add to add our bone objects. Now, as of right now, we can find all of our flexi bones easily, but as we start to add more and more to our rig, it might be a little bit difficult to select those objects. So one thing I like to do when trying to find the envelope objects is to head over to the find field at the top, and we can use an asterisk for a wildcard and go ahead and type in the name of the item we'd like to search for, or part of its name, which is bone, and then we can add another asterisk, and you can see, all right, instantly Max is going to filter out everything else except for anything that matches this name. So we will use that if needed just to get to our bone objects faster. All right, so with all of these flexi objects selected, we'll choose Select. Let's go ahead and press F3 to go to Shaded Mode and F4 so we can take a look at the topology and make sure it will hold well. We'll now go ahead and grab our chest control and start to twist and take a look at that. We're getting some great results. There's no need to paint any weights or anything like that. Initially, the results are fantastic. We can go ahead and start to pull this around. Beautiful stuff. We can start to adjust the pelvis. Great. We can also start to twist that around. Very fun. And then we can start to adjust the back control. Exciting. All right, let's go ahead and select all 3 controls. I'll right-click and choose Transform to 0. Great, so everything's working fine here. Now what happens if we start to scale our global control? All right, it looks like everything's working fine, right? Let's be on the safe side. We'll grab our center of gravity control and we will activate the spine volume. Already you saw a change. You saw how the box here protruded just slightly out. But watch what happens when we go in and start to adjust the scale now. It's not working right. There are a few things we need to adjust on our scale expression to get this to work. One, we need to make sure that our global variable looks at the scale of our global control. And the final thing we need to do is make sure that the expression considers the new length of our flexi line. Remember, we did adjust the size of the system, so we just need to plug in that information. And that's actually really simple to do, and we'll take a look at that. But before we get to that, let's grab our global control, head over to our motion panel, and go ahead and assign an XYZ controller to the scale. That way we can just go ahead and tie in this control's Y-axis. All right. So next we'll press F3 to go back to wireframe mode. Let's go back to layers, and let's go ahead and take a look at our flexi hidden layer. So we can go ahead and update the expression on D, C, and B. We can start with D. So with the bone object selected, we can press page up to get to BNDRV that has the expression. From there, let's go ahead and find the scale X, right-click and choose Properties. All right, so let's get to the easiest task first. It's going to be to change the global variable, what it points at. So let's go to Assign to Controller. We'll find our global control. Here it is, Anim Global. Let's expand it to get to its scale Y. All right, great. Now the last thing we need to do is, again, change the length here. Now, thankfully, Max makes this very easy for us. We've already assigned the distance channel to our length parameter. So if we were to choose debug, you'll see that we can actually find the new length this way. So that length is about 3.7875. Let's go ahead and remember that. We'll go to 10 and replace that with 3.7875. Now, let's take a look at our scene. When we go in and choose Evaluate, you can see that things are already starting to improve. Great, let's go ahead and copy that value. It is a pretty lengthy value. So once that has been copied, and once we have evaluated this expression, we can now go to the next controller here, the Z channel. We'll go ahead and choose Properties and update this the same way. So again, instead of 10, we'll paste our value in of 3.7875, and we'll also change the global variable to point at the global control scale Y channel. Great, so we can now go ahead and evaluate this, and that is taken care of. Object D is good to go. Let's say we go ahead and do the same thing for the other two helpers. I'll go ahead and pause the video. Alright, so the scale expression has been updated for all three objects. So now we can go ahead and test this out. Let's go ahead and find the center of gravity control, go back to the Modify panel. Right now, our volume channel is on. So let's go ahead and see if this works. Press F3 to go back to shaded mode. Now when we grab our global control and start to scale, notice everything works correctly. Very exciting. You can see we can still go to our chest control and add some squash and stretch. Do the same thing for the pelvis. Beautiful. Again, I'll select both objects. I'll right-click and choose Transform to 0. So now that we're good to go here, I'll go back to the global control, go to the scale tool. We'll just want to make sure that this is back to 100%, so we can go ahead and type that value in for all three scale channels. All right, great. So that's our progress check. That's exactly why it's a good idea to do this from time to time, just to make sure that everything is working properly. We don't want to ever assume anything, because the worst thing is to get to the very end only to realize that something might be broken and we don't quite know what that is, and that can get very annoying. All right, so we want to do these progress checks from time to time. I'll go ahead and hide the Flexi hidden layer again. We no longer need this box, so we can go ahead and delete that now. And we're ready to move on to the next area, which is going to be the character's head.